Okay, Tanya, people are just trickling in, but we can get started whenever you're ready.
Excellent. Welcome, everybody. We have people slowly coming in today. So first off, thank you for joining us. I hope you've topped up your coffee, you've sent your last few emails, and you are ready for today's conversation, depending on where you are. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Tanya Richards, and I have the pleasure and honor of being the director of the SMCC Vancouver chapter. I am also very excited for today's conversation because I personally have been in the live event space for about 20 years here in Vancouver. I have a boutique live event agency here, which during the pandemic politely means that I'm unemployed. So it's really exciting and refreshing to finally see conversations like today's emerging. We have, if you joined last week's conversation with SMCC webinar, it was fantastic. And I'm really excited about the content and conversation that we will see today. It's amazing. A few housekeeping things to get us going here. Of course, if you have any difficulty hearing, if you have any Zoom issues, please start with your audio settings and then reach out to us through the Q&A, and we'll be able to support you as best we can. Next, this in the line with what we're talking about today, I'm so excited to tell you, anybody who's in Vancouver, we are finally going to have our first in-person social event on July 8th. We're just finalizing all the details. It's going to be with our partners at Red Truck Brewing. If you're Vancouver based, you know that Red Truck traditionally in the summer has a concert series on their parking lot, which has been obviously deferred again for another year. So instead, they're going to host us. It'll be nice and spread out on the patio. We'll, of course, be abiding by all of our PHO health and safety rules, but we'll finally be in person again, 50 people, having a beer, mingling, and hearing everybody's story. Please keep an eye on your inbox for that over the next few days. That'll be in. It is free for members, and there'll be a nominal fee to attend for non-members. Next, the Sponsorship Marketing Awards have been confirmed for September 23rd. They are currently taking nominations still. So I plead with anybody West Coast based, please, if you've done something amazing over this past year, please submit. We would love to see more representation from the West Coast involved. It is also be virtual this year, so you can participate, you can see what's happening from a national perspective and what people have managed to do over this past year and be a little bit more involved. And finally, I really want to talk about our survey. So if you have your phone next to you, please take a screenshot of this QR code right now. We are looking for feedback from everybody. We do send an email post-event, but we'd love to hear it right away while it's fresh in your mind. This is how we learn. This is how we grow. This is how we change and adapt. So please provide us your candid thoughts on how today went, what you'd like to see us be a little bit more efficient with in the future, or, you know, if we were just absolutely amazing, please do let us know. But we really need to hear from everybody of how we're doing and what we can do to improve the opportunity for you. And next, what kind of sponsorship webinar would we be if we don't take a moment to thank our foundational partners? These amazing organizations help us year-round provide these virtual sessions for you for free, and they're also helping us with all of our get back to person events right now. So these are amazing organizations, and I thank them for their support and their involvement. Before we start off, I believe that Jordan will take a minute to acknowledge our territories, but I would just like to take a moment to acknowledge my territory. I live in the Semiahmoo region. I live, work, play here, and respect their land and appreciate the opportunity to raise my family here. So thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce today's moderator. I have known Jordan Kelman for, well, at least 15 years. I don't want to say any more than that because I'll be dating myself. But Jordan is not only a colleague, but I'm happy to call him a friend. He has a long bio that I'm not going to list off the whole thing, but I will tell you that truthfully, wholeheartedly, Jordan is one of the most creative, insightful people I've ever met. He is always looking at knowledge and education from a different perspective, and he pushes his people. He pushes his team, his staff, his colleagues, his friends all the time. Jordan could probably tell you a few stories of him and I going head to head, but he's always doing it in a way that makes me, as an operationally focused person, strive to be better at what we're doing, what we're producing and curating. And honestly, the best thing I can say about Jordan right now is that as a fellow boutique agency founder, he not only managed to stay alive over this past year, but he flourished. The social concierge leaned into not-for-profit, and through their support and supporting these organizations create these amazing curated virtual events, they helped raise over $1.2 million, which he should be absolutely proud of. So without further ado, Jordan, please take it away.
Thanks, Tanya. I swear that's like one of the nicest introductions I've ever had in my life. So deeply appreciate you and all the experiences that we've had together. I guess quick story really quickly. I think the last time I saw you, Tanya, was underneath the seating of an arena at like 4:45 a.m. counting our fictitious currency, the gulden, for one of our festivals. And I remember looking at you and saying, like, I don't think I want to do this ever again. Funny enough, I think I'm like, we're returning to live experiences and I kind of want to do it again. Is it weird? Anyways, such a pleasure to be here. Obviously, I would like to acknowledge that I'm physically present in the unceded, occupied, and traditional lands of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam First Nations, and that this dialogue is taking place in the online constant metaverse, which for many can be a tough place, very traumatic. And so the goal here is to create a space that's welcoming, insightful, and very valuable to all of us. And I think I speak on behalf of all the panelists in acknowledging this, that, you know, and for you as the audience members, that by being here today, you acknowledge that these same commitments. So thank you. Okay, so we have an incredible panel today. I'm super excited that veterans of industry coming from the insights at different perspectives, and it's going to be a really fun discussion. I'm super excited to get to the questions. But before I introduce each of the panelists, I think it's really important that I set some intentions and sort of summarize why we're here and what you can expect out of your next sort of 53 minutes of time and why that's going to be important. I think first and foremost, we're returning to live experiences, which is the craziest feeling, and I am so excited. It's so nice to feel like the bubbling happening and the projects coming back online for August and September onwards. You know, I feel as though I share this desire with all of you in the audience, and I feel like I also share that sort of drive to be back to live experiences again and bringing people together, which is so exciting. But obviously, and this is cliche, but so much has changed. There are so many different things happening in this space now. And over the course of the pandemic, I've been writing a twice monthly long form digest on the future of experience design, gatherings, the latest wonders and festivals. And looking back and preparing for this moderation, I identified 3 key themes of change that I think are going to guide the conversation today. And so this is really why we're here and what you can expect from the panelists. We're going to focus on these 3 themes. We might not cover all of them, but I'm hoping to get a little bit of ground on each one of the following. So the first one that I think is a little obvious, but I think is really important, is that is legacy thinking, the status quo of how we did things, has really imploded. Take digital marketing as a great example. The game has totally changed in how you advertise. Another great example is that traditional PR and the media landscape has completely shifted and forever changed. Going back to how traditional PR worked for our festivals and events and live experiences is just not going to work. We have a staffing crisis. We have materials shortages, and getting back to live events, I can't believe how expensive things are. And so what I'm saying is that the way things were done are not the way things are going to be done in the future. And I really want to cover some questions and some insights as to what this means for the future of live events. We obviously have a digital revolution going on. I call it like the Napster moment for live events. And when Napster launched like way back in 2003, and I was in like my parents' basement downloading digital music, getting viruses on my parents' computer, it was not a great experience. The user experience had left a lot to be desired. But over the course of 10 years, 15 years, we have these beautiful live online content experiences. And this is where I believe live events are headed. The technology right now is a little rough and rugged, but in the next 10 years, we're going to see incredible progress. So we are in a digital revolution, which is really exciting. And I expect that most of the conversation today will probably be focused in this domain. I think it's also very interesting. The other theme that I've picked up here is that there's a big change in how we organize ourselves. We used to really prefer these rigid top-down hierarchical structures, but it's moving towards a more fluid and flat community-driven way to solve problems. I read this like really amazing Malcolm Gladwell piece just very recently, comparing Martin Luther King's way of organizing civil rights movements back in the 60s versus today's Black Lives Matters movement. Black Lives Matters is decentralized and distributed, it's community driven, and it's completely different to Martin Luther King's way of hierarchical control and structures. And so I think that we're headed into an era of community. And I think that Andrea here is the expert. And I think we're gonna hear a little bit about this. I hope to cover a bit of it. So there's going to be a question and answer period at the end of this. Please, if you can you contribute, we would love to hear from you. Ask your questions in one of these 3 domains, and hopefully at the end I can leave a little bit of time so that we can really dive into what's burning and pressing for you and utilize the experience and insights of our panelists. Okay, let's introduce our thinkers, our doers, the master gatherers, and the people that you're going to hear from today. So first and foremost, Darshan Kaler, co-founder and CEO of Tradable Bits. Tradable Bits is a fan-based marketing platform for music and sports and is charting the path to personalized fan experiences for live events. He was involved in Vancouver 2010, which is what we share. I was as well. And he was responsible for building the communications network that brought Canada's games to our TVs and to our devices. Today, I expect Darshan to really bring the technologist's perspective to the conversation. Welcome, Darshan. Thanks so much for being here today. Did I miss anything?
No, it's fantastic. Glad to be here. I'm quite excited. Digital revolution at its best, and we're actually living through it right now.
Do you want to just celebrate a win with us? Do you want to let us know what your biggest pandemic achievement was and maybe an insight behind it?
Yeah, one of the things I'm pretty proud of on the team, and I would say we were lucky, even though when the pandemic hit, the live entertainment industry collapsed on itself, which is our core revenue. We were able to kind of stay afloat internally because we were growing. We're a SaaS technology company, so our rate of growth was pretty phenomenal. We were able to sustain everybody, staffed 100%, but we focused on a new medium that everybody was jumping into, which is live streaming, and rolled out a platform called FanXP that's currently used today for live concerts internationally, used by sports. So if you happen to be VIP access, you might have been able to watch live sports for Raptors games, NHL games, using FanXP, as was they call Digital Arena. So we're pretty excited. Even just as of yesterday, Sports Business actually ranked Digital Arena, which is powered by Tradable Bits, as the top 4 technology innovations during in the sporting category. In the last 12 months. So we're pretty excited to see the transitional change, but we're also equally excited about live entertainment. So from that perspective, we want to bridge the gap between the two, but I think you can't put the genie back in the bottle. So we've got more conversations on that. I can give you some insights on what I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's great. We're going to talk about how sponsors and audience members have changed and what to expect in the future. I expect you to bring a real nice insight package from the technologist angle, which is great. So thank you. Next up, Andrea Arnott. She's the executive director of the Vancouver Pride Society. It's the month of love, Andrea. It's Pride Month in Canada. She runs a festival that is, I believe, the largest single day cultural festival in Vancouver, which is really incredible. And what's even more incredible is that for such a high touch, hug and love festival, Vancouver Pride Society executed over 60 virtual events during the pandemic. So I have a feeling there's gonna be some really interesting insights that get unpacked, in that experience, which is amazing. Andrea's superpower is connecting cohesive teams and finding innovative ways to engage community around social issues, which, for our third sort of thematic, how we organize is going to be really interesting to have a chat about. So Andrea, welcome. Surprised you found the time, during such a crazy month for you. Do you want to give us a little win about what you achieved over the pandemic?
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to be here. A silly personal one is I learned that I'm not too old to learn new skills. I learned how to be a digital content producer instead of a live event producer. But I think for us too, like Darshan, we were able to pivot our events and our sponsors and our obligations and put on a virtual season and keep all of our staff employed and serve our community. So I think that was a huge win for us last year.
Yeah, that is a big win. Still can't believe how many events you produced. That's amazing. I can't wait to unpack that a little bit. Okay, next up, Tyrone Nayar, Executive Director of 5X Festival. During the pandemic, he was focused on the digital adoption of the festival and pivoted massively into hybrid. And I think hybrid is like the new, talking point for everybody. What is hybrid and how do we do it? So Tyrone is going to unpack that. He's training Indian classical music, and he's passionate for creating opportunities in the arts. Going back, 2006, he formed and led Delhi to Dublin, which was an incredible band. He doesn't probably remember this, but I booked him for one of the coolest parties of all time, which was the Athlete Village party after closing ceremonies during Vancouver 2010. Still to this day ranks as the #1 party, the best vibe I've ever been part of. I think it was just the most incredible experience. And Tyrone, thank you so much for acing that performance. You guys were amazing. So anything else you want to add or celebrate a win with us?
I mean, I remember hanging out with Sid Crosby that night right after we won the gold medal, and what a mind-blowing experience that was. Just taking selfies with Sid Crosby, making the rest of the world jealous. It was so awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me here. It's been it's been such a wild ride for all of us. I think what we did is worked with a tech company that a buddy of mine owns in Bombay and built an app that essentially kind of simulated a music festival by setting up 30 stages, 40 stages actually in the app, and you have to walk around in the real world with your phone hooked up to your step counter to get from stage to stage. So it allowed us to keep people employed, allow us to book artists. We as well, thankfully, we're blessed to not have to let anybody go. And I'm still doing a lot of soul searching over what is the solution, because I think that there was a lot of, there was a lot of good that came from our experience, but there was also a lot of shortcomings. And so I'm still doing a lot of thinking about like what is next. So thanks for having me here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Really excited to unpack that a little bit too. It's gonna be such a good conversation. All right, finally, panelist number 4, Aaron Benjamin, President and CEO of the Canadian Live Music Association, music nonprofit that did an incredible amount of digital campaigning over the pandemic. Aaron herself is former Executive Director of Folk Music Ontario and the Canadian Arts Presenting Association. A couple of those campaign highlights, which I'm sure Aaron will talk about, #ForTheLoveOfLive had 43 million person reach and raised, I believe, 300 million in emergency relief for the broader live music sector, which is so incredible. Aaron also live streams a weekly show from her living room, which is awesome, which has raised over $125,000 personally for local charities. So this is a humongous achievement. Aaron, you want to talk about those a little bit just before we get started?
Well, thanks for having me. And I would just like to say that I'm here in Ottawa. I think that all of you are in BC, but I'm here in Ottawa, and I'm located on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, whose presence here, of course, reaches back to time immemorial, this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful city of Ottawa. So there's lots I could say. Great, really nice to meet you all. And of course, Tyrone is on my board of directors and is a personal hero and has really, I think, led so much of the live music conversation in this country, whether he knows it or not, in the last year and beyond. So it's great to be here. That For the Love of Live campaign, actually, I guess I need to update my bio, even though you guys only got it a couple weeks ago. The campaign now has a reach of 55 million as of today. It's just remarkable, and I'm happy to talk about it more. But I guess one of the wins from our perspective here at the Canadian Live Music Association is very much what you've already been talking about, and that is the convergence of our formerly disparate community. The Canadian Live Music Association was founded in 2014 to be a voice of live music in the country. Lots of sector associations existed. Live music didn't have one. We started in 2014 to build and then enter the pandemic, and we were doing fine. We were doing really cool stuff. And I think making a difference, but enter the pandemic, and I think it became immediately clear to so many people that by working together, we would be able to accomplish way more. And I'm so, so proud of the live music sector in this country because, you know, I don't think it would be an overstatement to say that we don't always play that well together. We, you know, proprietary entrepreneurial competitors, and that's okay. And you know, live music's always been a bit of Wild West, and that's part of our edge, right? It's part of who we are. But today, and I think part of what our future will be focused on is how do we continue to stay so connected? How do we embrace other communities? All of that heavy lifting that we're really excited about doing and we're embarking on now, really growing that community spirit and keeping us together for all of the right reasons. So it's been an absolute joyride, and it's weird to, I mean, it's also been hell. It has been a nightmare. It has been so difficult. And, but really when I step back, I'm able to say that I'm so proud of this community for coming together and working together and really raising their voices to talk about not only the economic piece, of course, but the social and cultural impacts of live music and who we are and why we matter. And it's been a great opportunity to tell our story.
So great, Erin. I agree with you. Community and helping each other is the name of the game right now, particularly with so much change. So theme of the conversation today, 100%. Thanks for sharing. I'll start with you, just because we're here and I think you've got so much to share. I'm curious, talking about legacy and the leaving of the legacy thinking behind. So for you, what expectations have changed in either the live event consumer mindset or the sponsor mindset? Do you want to talk about like what's changed, what habits you've seen formed that are new and we need to discuss?
I would certainly say, I mean, and this might be obvious, and I'm not a sponsorship expert, so I may defer to my colleagues here, but, you know, I think the social responsibility and what we're all doing to really affect change. I mean, the live music sector has a blank slate if it wants it. And I think a lot of people do want it. And I think we want to do better. So from a collaborative, you know, no matter who we're collaborating with, whether it's stakeholders or other partners in whatever project, I think that we really have an obligation, a responsibility, and I'm seeing it every day, a deepening commitment to really leveraging the opportunity before us to get things right. And that would include sort of that corporate social responsibility aspect from a donor's perspective or a sponsor's perspective. Again, that we work with sponsors. Like my practical experience here would be with industry folks, and you know, we're leading projects or whatever internally. So, but I'm watching our members in our live music community really sort of deepen those relationships and talking about other things that aren't just about the bottom line.
Yeah, I think an expectation in the consumer mindset is to create impact in you know, a give back program. So great identification there. I think that's really important. Andrea, anything to like build on or a counter take to anything that Erin said?
Yeah, I definitely have seen a shift, especially with the sort of anti-racism uprising that happened in 2020. A lot of our sponsors are really trying to delve into that social responsibility piece and, you know, have been more interested in supporting like our community bursary programs and accessibility initiatives, and really looking at how to be intersectional in their work and not just be about the bottom line or sponsorship as more a marketing opportunity. So I have seen a real shift in that. And I think, you know, we've had a pause during this pandemic for a lot of us to think about how we do things and who we include and how we can be more inclusive. And, you know, this is a great time as we move back into having live events again and having our sponsors involved to really rethink how things are done.
Nice. I definitely resonate with that. Maybe a little follow-up question, just because I want to get a little deeper and a little bit more specific. So sponsors obviously need audiences, and I think that's really key. And so in your opinion, how do we build audiences back up quickly? You know, what are you using in terms of a strategy to build audiences back up to provide value to sponsors?
Yeah, so of course, last year we did a totally virtual season, and we attached sponsors to different virtual pieces that we were doing. This year we have a hybrid season of live in-person small events and digital, and so we're bringing in sponsors to both pieces. And I think with our digital reach, we've worked really hard on having a wider audience. Of course, there are Pride organizations all over the world, so we've tried to network through Fair to Canada Pride, which is the umbrella organization for Canadian Prides, and Interpride, which is a World Pride organization, to put out our events, put out what we're doing, so that we have like a worldwide audience on what we're doing. And that, of course, our sponsors get those eyes on their pieces as well.
Amazing. Tyrone, I'm going to move over to you. I'm curious, like, what has not changed in your festival organizing experience? What is not changing? What can we rely on moving forward for either audiences or sponsors?
I mean, real life is still better than digital. And I just finished writing an article that I'm happy to share with the rest of the panelists and whoever else wants, where I really went deep into this idea of connection and transcendence. And there's so much that we can do online, but there's this certain ineffable thing that happens at a live event that I've tried a lot of stuff. Like, I've put on festivals in Minecraft this year. I've done AR stuff. We built an app. I've tried so many freaking things this year to try to make it make sense. But at the end of the day, getting 50 people, even if it's only 50 people together, brings us, like, there's a sense of connection. And I think it has to do with like actual physical connection and energy that's transmitted between people that creates an energy that's sort of bigger than the sum of its parts. And that's the beauty of live music and live events, and that hasn't changed. And so I'm still chasing that. And I think that any hybrid solution has to be taking into account the fact that, like, if you think about Strava, for example, there's Strava artists who go around and like make loops with their bikes and stuff, but there's still, the core value is still biking or running, and that's still included in the activity. It's not like they've started playing a video game to substitute for the core value. And I think that any kind of app that we build or any kind of hybrid digital solution still has to take into consideration that the core value is still human connection, like physical human connection. So we have to be building around that and not trying to substitute it.
Okay. Can I add to that? Because that's a really
go for it.
topic. One of the things that kind of Aaron mentioned this earlier on. For us, we've had an opportunity to work in both industries, both sports and music, and there's the biggest fans are fans. They're avid about a certain product, brand, or whatever it is. They exist of being part of something bigger. But one thing different between the two industries is that one is the sharing of best opportunities and what works and what doesn't work. In the music industry, it's a cutthroat business, lots of competition. But on the sports side, the competition just stays on the floor with regards to if you're playing basketball or whatever it is. But the sharing of information and best practices within each of the teams is actually mind-bogglingly open. So it's because if you're a fan of the Canucks, you're a fan of the Canucks. You're not going to go and change into the Leafs, and so on, right? But but at the end of it, or Senators, or and so on. But the whole point is that this last 12 months have kind of shaped it a little bit more different. Survival. I think on the music side, it opened up the doors on how do we try new things. I've been trying to push the music industry to digitize. I mean, like, how do you get leveraging the technologies that are available today that is used by a lot of marketing industries today, but hasn't been really deployed heavily on the music side. And in the last 12 months, it has given us an opportunity to evaluate what that is. And then how to leverage it. And a lot of the promoters or the folks that are in the music industry have been trying and experimenting. And I think that hasn't happened as much because it was rinse, repeat, an industry that was just nonstop. And the fact that for the first 3 months, I think it was almost like a withdrawal state. Because we've been privileged to be able to be, working with, some of the top promoters in North America and Australia, and to see them go through a withdrawal, like someone going through a withdrawal state for 3 months, it was eye-opening. And then to the point on when they get to the 5th month or the 6th month, they're like, okay, what can we do? Then the openness of trying new things became possibilities. And as Tyrone has indicated, the fact that you've tried all these different things actually reshapes what we're going to do in the future. But one thing that you did say is absolutely true and resonated very well on the sporting side, is community. So when we ran a lot of these, what we call bubble season, people came back to the community chats and the community involvement, and it extended not only within the region you're in, because in most of the cases, if I'm a Toronto Raptors fan, for example, you might have a Toronto Raptors fan that's sitting in Philippines, Manila, and they couldn't communicate within the community within the Toronto region, and that changed it. Borders disappeared. Time zones didn't really matter, and it actually broke the barrier specifically on getting connected with a brand that you really love. And I've seen that also in the music industry side, where now, when you take a look at regionals, where an artist normally goes, I'm playing in Toronto, and then they have some sort of radius clause, live streaming has decimated that piece. Like, what is going to go and what's going to happen? And let alone, let's take a look at this year, what's going on. All the festivals are literally crammed in a 2 to 3 month. In the US, it's just nonstop. But the demand for live has not slowed down. In fact, more so now, like ticket in the US, particularly, tickets will go on sale and they're gone within hours. Like, everybody is on, literally can't get out fast enough. So, do I think that eventually it'll settle down? Absolutely. Do I think that competition will come back again within the music industry? Possibly. Definitely, probably more likely. But the type of relationships that have been melded, kind of opened up the doors, is going to change the way that industry is going to interact.
Can I jump in just real fast, Jordan? Just anecdotally, this live stream thing that I do on Saturday nights with a local artist who's a dear friend, and raising all this money. I mean, this Saturday night will be show number 60, and the reason it's working is because he's been playing in Ottawa for years. He's like a dueling pianos guy, and everybody knows him, and everybody loves him. And he plays cover tunes, but because he's been playing for 44 years, where he's got fans from around the world, and they have reconnected in the chat. And these people, the show starts at 7:30 Eastern. They are there. They're waiting. If we're 2 minutes late, he gets 100 posts on his Facebook page saying, "Where are you?" But not only has it brought them together, it has opened their hearts, like the generosity. Like, we only fundraise for small local charities. That's the rule. So, not the big ones, but really the little ones that you might not have even ever heard of. And people have been moved through the connection to give in ways that, and a lot of them talk about this. I've never really given to charity before. And this, I think, it's a gold mine in a really genuine, authentic way. And just to your other point, I mean, about the hybridity, like, I think for those people, and it's a particular maybe demographic, I think of my mom, who has consumed more live music out of her apartment in downtown Toronto than she ever thought she would. She's discovered artists, she's done all these things. She is not going to start buying concert tickets, but she will continue to consume. So the hybrid model, I think, is really interesting. I don't think we're going to I think we've added on to the music industry, and I think that add-on is here to stay, and it'll be up to us to figure out how to really exploit it in a positive way for the folks who feel that is their best form of connection.
Yeah, so many insights to unpack. I think the hybrid model is not zero sum, it's additive. It's just like live content. We're just going to watch more music. We're going to take part in more virtual events. I think that's great. Shared interests drive virtual events. If you have a shared interest, you can drive people together and build a community around it. But to Tyrone's point, oxytocin, the feeling of being together, like the hugs, the feeling of handshaking, doesn't happen. So it's a different style. But I definitely agree with you, Aaron. I think it's additive, and I think that that's incredible. So let's talk about hybrid a little bit. Tyrone, maybe we can jump back over to you, because I really feel like you were doing a lot of hybrid experiences with 5X Festival. Do you want to just give us a belief level and what you think it's working in terms of the hybrid model moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I'm still very much in the process of working on this, and actually, you know, the CLMA are sort of helping us out with this digital strategy grant through the Canada Council to continue exploring some ideas around, you know, how can we build more resilient festival ecosystems going forward? What kind of technology makes sense? And we've experimented with a lot of stuff. I think it's also important, just because this is kind of sponsorship focused, to note that I think, you know, sponsors want impact, and they want there to be an element of, you know, specialness and emotional involvement in whatever's happening. And maybe it's because I deal with a really young demographic, but we've actually seen live streaming numbers crash like hard. First couple months of the pandemic, yeah, people were tuning in. We were throwing parties on Twitch every Saturday for 2,500 people. It was great. We were raising money. 2 months later, down to 250, you know, and now we just don't even do it. Like, my interest in organizing Instagram live events and open mics and stuff online for my audience, which is like under 30, is minimal, because no one cares anymore. They're actually, even when the pandemic was happening, they were still sneaking out with their friends and partying. And I can like try to like, you know, wag my finger at them and tell them it's wrong, but that's the reality. Whether I say it or not, they're out there doing real life stuff, because that's what makes a difference to them. And yes, they want a game and stuff, but when it comes to live, like partying and music, they don't want to be watching it on their devices. They're not interested, or at least we haven't found the right way to connect that. So I think in terms of wooing sponsorship and partnership dollars, we haven't figured it out yet. We haven't figured out that magical place that's going to bring in the younger demographic, like the Gen Z and the millennials, and also bring sponsors to the same place. I think that's the challenge for us.
Yeah, I think the technology is still very primitive, and there's a lot of missing pieces. So I think you're speaking the truth there for sure.
Well, yeah, it's like I just think about TikTok. Like, I get more entertainment in, you know, 3 minutes of scrolling through TikTok than I do for a 30-minute live stream. It's just like, it's not packaged in the way that generation wants things to be packaged. If you're going to be scrolling on your phone, it's got to be like, there's got to be a punchline every 15 seconds. Or you've got to be at a live event where you're sharing actual relationships with other people. That's my take on it so far.
Yeah, really.
The one thing, Andrea, I know you were going to chat. This one is a clip of basically, you know, what we've seen in the, you know, younger demographics, specifically if we're dealing with esport and music. You have to be genuine, and the sponsorship opportunities that happen can't be just, oh, I got my logo up, because that's not going to drive anything. If anything else, it goes the opposite. This base is so critical. They can see through it right away, and if you're not genuine, you're gonna get shredded to the point where you're like, what just happened? So I think that's the other challenge as well, is the sponsorship, or the sponsors in this case, has to also evolve. You know, to try to figure out how do they connect with this younger demographic. They want to. The old way of doing things is not going to be the way.
Dorshan, do you have an example of like what being genuine looks like? And if you don't have it right now, we can come back to you, but I'm just curious, you know, making it very specific for the audience.
Sure. Like, you know, there's situations like, for example, apparel is a good one. And a genuine way of rolling it out and a non-genuine way of rolling it out. A genuine way that we've seen it is from the grassroots. A lot of these kids, they know that they like a brand that is not potentially mainstream. I shouldn't be able to get it at Walmart or whatever, right? There's something unique about that piece. And so when there's a release that happens, or a drop or whatever that may be, it is very specific, tied to, it could be a brand apparel that has a cause that they can wrap their head around and they believe in. and so on. But a sponsor that genuinely is not in that space, and then they jump in on just joining the bandwagon, specifically tied to, you know, a supporting group that they never supported before without a genuine attachment to it is a killer. And we've seen those. I can't mention the brands, but we've seen those crash and burn. So from that perspective, I think transformative from the sponsor perspective, they have to figure out the path to transform, to get into a group, but they can't just come in and say, oh, by the way, now I support this group. And that's really the worst case that I've seen. But in a lot of spaces where I've seen a success is providing that support to that up and coming, or the, you know, the grassroots, where the fans are really empowered to support that activation. For me, that I just see it as that activation piece.
Nice. I'm hearing you on those insights. That's really great. You know, those authentic communities that are being built. I'm a big NFT fan, and I'm like, you know, seeing those, like, you know, cool NFT communities that are being built around scarcity drops, you know, and like, you know, community like hooks, and like trying to like really build it on Discord threads. I think that's really interesting. There's a lot to be learned there. Andrea, I haven't come back to you in a minute. I just want to bounce back your way. I've got a question in regards to economic modeling, and it's something that I'm really interested in. I think an audience member asked the question about it. What, either in the sponsorship side or on the audience side, do you see as the way forward from an economics perspective? So either in how things need to be from a sponsor economics perspective, or from a ticketing access perspective for these like sort of hybrid experiences. Do you have any insights around that with your 60 virtual events that you produced over the pandemic?
It's a big question, and maybe a little more strategic than we actually thought we had to be on our feet. But I think for us, you know, Vancouver Pride has done the same things the same way for a long time. We have, you know, limited spaces when we do live events. Like our Sunset Beach Festival can't get any bigger. There's no more room. And so doing things in a digital way, we had to look at how do we pivot our sponsors to what we were doing last year, virtual, this year, hybrid season. And I think just figuring out different ways to involve sponsors or to hook them, again, going back to social cause, a lot of them were more interested in being attached to like whatever we were doing for accessibility for our virtual events, or to support a small community organizer who's Indigenous to do a virtual event. They wanted to be attached to that. We also have, you know, a traditional sponsorship model with bronze, silver, gold presenting sponsor. And so we actually pivoted. We still have those sponsors, but we also created like a rainbow partnership program, which was a 5 to 10K investment, which is small for us. Our sponsorship entry levels are quite a bit higher, but we allowed different organizations to come in and experience Pride with a smaller investment to sort of test it out and see what would work. And we're still doing that again this year for our hybrid season as well. And that's allowed a lot of organizations who are interested in supporting, you know, Pride movement to have that opportunity that they might not be able to like jump on board right away. So that, I don't know if that answers your question specifically, but we've tried to pivot how we involve sponsors and to really make sure that you know, we get with virtual events, give the sponsor an opportunity to like introduce panelists. Like it's not like a sponsor ad, but it's the sponsor coming in and saying, we're here to introduce this workshop today. You know, we're excited to learn along with you with the audience. So trying to bring in those, again, like genuine connections for our sponsors to feel like they're involved.
Have you, just a little follow-up question, have you looked at like, you know, providing more flexible refunds or, you know, different membership tiers and structures, subscriptions? Have you looked at any of that? And do you think any of that makes sense for the future?
For participants, most of our event, I'm not the best person to speak to this because pretty much all of our events are free public events. So other folks who have ticketed events might be able to speak to that a little bit better than me.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, maybe one of the panelists, when I come back around to you, you can sort of speak to this as a sort of an ad build on. But Aaron, I'll come back to you. Is there sponsorship activations that you've seen in the hybrid space or the virtual space that you think really works, and something that you're really excited by for the future?
Gosh. Yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is the Junos this year, and they just happened the other day, the beginning of June, back on CBC with some new sponsors. And I think what I liked, and I don't know if this can answer your question, but what I liked there was, you know, what did really feel like a very authentic understanding of the impact of the industry and the ability of CARIS, the Canadian Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences, to produce the Junos, to really work so hard to pull that show off, and a real acknowledgement of all the various moving parts and pieces. And so that felt really good to me. I would say that I haven't seen a ton of sponsors on some of the sort of medium to smaller shows. I would say, actually, you know, what I can say too is as maybe a shout out to a couple of brands that we've worked with, who one of them is as Kinaxis, the technology supply chain software company here in Ottawa, who stepped up with that significant contribution of cash, which we then infused and continue to infuse into the industry for live streaming as a way to just move money through the ecosystem, especially to get it to artists. And this was a company who simply loved music, with a CEO who simply wanted to help and really felt that the supply chain software was a good fit. And it's been a really great story to tell. And then, you know, the other one, and this is interesting, is Jagermeister. We just did Jager got active in the States around the impact of COVID on venues, and put some money through the Venue Coalition there, and then came to us to do the same thing here in Canada. And it's been really interesting to gauge response, and actually part of that activation was meant to inspire other brands to step up. If there's any brands listening, there's lots of room. Give me a call. We still need you. But just really interesting to see Jager kind of absorb that space, get the reactions from folks. So what we're doing is handing out small checks to individual venues who applied through this program. And there was some sort of pushback at a certain point. Well, you know, that's not enough money. It's not, you know, a company of your size, you should be giving more. And I found that so frustrating, because it's not like there's a lineup of sponsors or brands to support the live music industry. And Jager put their hand up really fast and found a way to make it work. And I think they're doing their very best. I think it's good for Jager, but it's also good for the community. So just a couple of examples there, and I'm sure there are lots more for events that have actually happened that my colleagues can talk about too.
No, I think you nailed some storytelling around the give back and the social impact, which is really working to, you know, to Darshan's point, to be like genuine. It's like, we're just trying to help here. And I think that's really worked for a lot of partners, and I think it's going to continue to work for the future.
Very quickly too, sorry, Jordan, I would just say that for a company like Kinaxis that had never even stuck its toe in the music water, like, what, you know, they went where they followed their hearts, right? And it led them to us. And it's a really funny way how we met, but ultimately what dropped for the CEO there, John Sicard, look him up, he's an amazing guy, such a genuine, sweet man. But he was like, I can actually help, like, there's a pathway. And it wasn't complicated. He's just so excited to be like part of the music industry in his own way. And I think that there's so much room for that kind of like really kind of cool relationship building for brands out there. Talk about things that are changing. Like, you know, I guess I'm cautiously optimistic that some brands maybe as a result of need or interest that was always there, like, may find their way to some unusual suspects in the future, so that they can, you know, they can actually go where they want to go instead of what's going to make the biggest bang, because and to grow it in a really organic way. And that's what's happening with Kinaxis, and it's exciting to watch.
Yeah, so exciting. There's questions rolling in from the audience here all around sponsorship activation, so I'm going to stay on this topic a little bit more. Harry asks, you know, how is sponsorship activation in terms of in-person food and beverage sampling going to change in a hybrid model, and how does that unpack for the future? So open it up to any of the panelists to sort of like tackle this, or sponsorship activation examples in general, because I feel like, you know, this is an interesting topic for the audience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can add one, not for the food and tasting and things like that, but definitely for the food. The one thing to see when we're doing sponsorship, it's finding authentic ways to connect within the industry you're going into. So, for example, let's take a real use case where it's a country music festival happening in the U.S. And a casino is looking, sponsoring the event because it's locally within their community. And they were going, okay, as a sponsor, how do we involve ourselves within the community? And so they chose to find the local food that was going to be at the festival and wanted to find ways to promote tasting of certain foods and so on. So they rolled out a spin it to win type of campaign, which is a gaming thing tied to casino, tied to a food beverage that was going to be local within the festival. And then now you have an authentic use case and a brand that fits tied to the sponsor and the fan that's going to be able to get some food and taste it all in one shot, right? And so I think when you're looking at sponsorship activations, not everybody's thinking of all the paths. And I think for me as a technology and helping the promoters, that's part of the trick. So it's not about just enter to win to, okay, and you get a name and you get a coupon, but just make it so that it all fits in perfectly and it's actually authentic within the actual event that they're going to be in. And no one sees the brand. In reality, they don't. They just have a fun experience. They thought it was fun. Did you get this? Did you get that? People are chatting about it. And in the end, the brand is there, the coloring is there, the scheme is there. And the tasting of all that stuff comes in at the tail end of it. So all of that in a digital experience. And then there's a conclusion of getting something at the tail end. And then to close the loop on that, if they buy additional products on top of that, because they tried a beverage, maybe it's a Red Bull thing, or maybe it's actually a food beverage item, through the trend, again, to bring it back to technology, if someone used Square or some payment gateway type of thing, you could potentially track, is there an improvement on that fan experience, or did they trigger a change in their behavior through to that sponsorship? And sometimes sponsors are really interested in, did they move the needle, right? And this is where data plays a part, because it's not about just putting some dollars down, putting some names in, because the sponsor might be just like what Aaron indicated, where someone is passionate about music, they just want to be there and let me help. But most sponsors are coming in because they want to touch and get connected with certain types of demographic group, and they want to see if there's a transactional change in behavior. And all of that requires data in the end as the technology closes the loop. And I think most festivals don't take that to its full potential. And certainly that's one of the things that I would say that definitely is an eye-changing effect of what's happening in the industry.
Yeah, nice. Good call out. The use of data is just going to be more and more important as we move forward. So love that. I think there were some other panelists who wanted to jump in on this activation question as well. Is there any other comments or thoughts that anybody wants to share?
I just, on a really simplistic level for us, we've included our liquor sponsors in our digital programming. So we have these little segments called timeouts, like timeout from the pandemic, that we did last year and we're filming this year again. And I have a staff person who really loves to cook. So she's done her test kitchen where she made, Stanley Park Brew Pub is one of our sponsors. So she made Stanley Park beer fish and chips and did a little how to make it short video. And then that experience will be continued through our hybrid to our live, where we have our Pride lounges, and we'll have 2-hour time slots for folks to sign up to come to Stanley Park Brew Pub and 2 other of our liquor sponsor lounges, have some entertainment, have a drink. So the liquor sponsor is sort of getting the digital piece as throughout that campaign, and then it translates into the hybrid event where it's live, and some folks do get to experience that during Pride weekend. So we've tried to weave the sponsor in through the whole hybridness of our season.
Yeah, so good. There's definitely some amazing strategies there. Tyrone, a question from Lisa in the audience. How do we reward fan loyalty for live events post-COVID. And this is sort of transitioning towards our sort of final theme, which is sort of like inclusivity, diversity, and community-driven organizing. So maybe a little insight from you on what you think is really important on how to engage or incentivize fan loyalty moving forward.
Yeah, I almost feel like at this point, I can't remember who brought it up, but it's almost like we are being incentivized, like the promoters, because fans are so desperate for anything that literally everything sells out immediately. And so what we're trying to do is just make sure that we provide some kind of, it's still very hard to organize live events because we still don't, even though the end is in sight, they're still changing. Like Ontario just put out a bunch of new regulations today, Aaron, that I know that you're working with. So it's still hard. So I think we're just trying to like get the job done and try to bring people together. The theme of our event this year is come together. I haven't got to the point where we're like, okay, well, how do we incentivize people to come out and stay with us? Because like they're so chomping at the bit to come out and do anything that's not really a concern. It's like we just have to make sure that there's a place that people can come together and hopefully everything works. And hopefully nothing bad happens. I think that's our mentality, if that's helpful.
Pretty exciting place to be. So fun, and it's going to be a total revival, and I'm very excited for it. I want to respect everybody's time. We have a few minutes left. You probably have like 4 or 5 minutes left. So maybe we can just go around and we can do some like closing thoughts, and maybe a thought starter around the sort of closing thoughts. How do we go beyond in the future here? How do we go beyond the banner, the sign, the logo on the website to provide value for partners in this sort of like new normal? If everybody can maybe share their final thoughts or a new insight that you think is the most important, I think that would be a really nice way to end this experience for everybody. Darshan, do we want to start maybe in your direction? A couple closing thoughts.
Sure. Yeah. The reality is, from my perspective and what I've seen in the industry, in the industry I work with, there is an appreciation far more than ever before to understand the importance of live, and live sports, live music, you name it. And that coming together portion, I like to steal that word from you from that perspective. But at the end of the day, it's no longer the physical world. I think the coming together means it is just a community and how to come together, and it doesn't mean it has to be physical. The genie's out of the bottle, and at which point, from my perspective, when I see it, as Aaron even indicated, you've got access to artists that you never did before, and there's ways for you to connect, or within that group to connect within the communities they have, and they don't have to be regional. And so from that perspective, when we take a look at of that today, and what it'll be like 5 years from now, there is an added effect of this new medium that's acceptable. We came kicking and screaming. We really did. Kicking and screaming, don't want it, don't need it. And the fact is, everybody's learned how to use it. So something like this that probably would have taken an extra 5 years to get everybody used to, we did it in literally 13 months. And if you're a person that haven't been forced to get onto a video conference, good on you. So from that perspective, I think it's accepted. It's no different than a medium, a medium that we've pre-pandemic, when I did video conferences, people would turn off the video. It would be, they would feel like their personal space has just kind of been taken advantage of. In today's world, if you don't have a video on and everybody else has something on, you're explaining why your video is not on. So it's a split change, and certainly the communities that we're building is already now solidified on a digital world, and I see it with my kids, I see it with my family, and so on, and I can see that moving towards as part of a hybrid activity that might happen on the physical world as well. But it's not going away.
Yeah, agreed. Aaron, final thoughts.
Yeah, just quickly, I mean, I'll go back to what I said about the unusual suspects and in terms of really growing that value proposition. I think it's all about really authentic relationships and really digging in and like what do we have to lose? Like we have now all come to understand the passage of time in a completely different way. We understand our own mental health, our own physical health. What are we waiting for? I mean, this is our opportunity to really build truly authentic relationships again with hopefully as many unusual suspects as possible. And it's limitless. The potential in live music right now, not just fans who want to come back and are rabid for those tickets, but to really, really entrench the value of that experience in our psyche as a nation is in our hands. And I'm really excited to keep that at the fore as we move through making some big decisions for this community and so many silver linings in the last 16 months. And I love saying that sentence.
Yeah, we're full of potential. Tyrone, let's get a final thought that you think is really important from you.
Yeah, I just love, you know, we're a bit of a dark horse, I would say, as an organization, because we're serving a community that typically hasn't been very, you know, well served or even recognized. You know, there's tens of thousands of young South Asian youth at various campuses and, you know, in cities across Canada, but that's not usually who sponsors are thinking about. So it's been really great just because that community is extremely active online. This sort of new digital focus and acceptance of digital events as a thing that's valid is great. And also the increased focus on BIPOC populations. I mean, those are two things which just spell opportunity for us because it means, you know, more credibility and recognition than we've ever, you know, been exposed to in the past. I have a feeling we're going to like fight our way out of the trenches this year, which is great.
Yeah, so great. This is such a positive call. I love it. Andrea, you get the final word before we wrap up.
Thanks. Well, I was just going to say we're not going back to not doing digital. We've learned that it enhances our event portfolio. We've heard from folks like just around accessibility. You know, this is the first time in 15 years that I feel like I can fully participate in Pride because for whatever reason they can't be in a large crowd or in a parade. And it opens up our audience on a global scale, as mentioned before. And I think like we represent a broad spectrum of ages and backgrounds. And so people can participate in Pride in different ways that are meaningful to them, whether that's a workshop or a queer history panel or, you know, a BIPOC artist being able to have a platform for a whole hour, whereas at our Sunset Beach Festival, they might get 5 minutes on our stage because it's so jam-packed. So digital is here to stay with us. And I think it just enhances what we do.
Yeah, it's such a build. It's such an additive, and I just love that perspective. So thanks so much. Thank you all for being here today. You know, I think we have a real like welcoming vibe that we got going today, and I'm really excited about that. You know, as a community of live event professionals, I think we all need to be looking out for each other, and we need to be sharing as much as possible. You know, we're navigating this like this sort of like revival, this return together, and it's going to be challenging and difficult and exciting all at the same time. And I think the community spirit is what's key here. We need to welcome everybody and we need to share what's working with each other. And I think that community spirit is what's going to help us transform into something super incredible in the future. So thank you so much. All four of you did an incredible job, shared so many insights. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks, Tyrone. Good to see you again.